This is not a story. This is a warning. Across America, there are places where the nightmares never end, and the truth is buried with the dead. Tonight, we open another door. Welcome to the American Nightmare. In the hills of West Virginia, long before the name Mothman would spread across the country, there were reports. Quiet at first, scattered. People describing something they couldn't explain. A shape seen at the edge of the woods. A figure standing where nothing should be standing. A presence that didn't move like anything natural. Some believed it was a bird. Others said it looked almost human. But certain details repeated. A tall silhouette. Wings that seemed too large for any known animal. And eyes, glowing red in the dark, fixed on whoever noticed them. At the time, these accounts were easy to dismiss. Rural sightings, misidentified wildlife, stories that fade as quickly as they appear. Until November of 1966, Clendenin, West Virginia. A small cemetery rests on a wooded hill above the town. Surrounded by dense Appalachian forest, the location grows darker faster than the valley below. As the sun dips behind the ridgeline, shadows stretch across the ground, swallowing the narrow paths between the graves. Two grave diggers remain at work late into the evening. They're finishing a burial before the ground hardens overnight. The air is cold enough to sting the lungs. Each shovel strike meets resistance from the stiff earth, producing a dull, heavy sound that echoes slightly through the trees. For a while, that's all there is. The steady rhythm of work, the faint crunch of soil, the kind of quiet that feels normal in a place like this, until it changes. One of the men slows, then stops. He doesn't immediately know why. Something feels different. Not louder, not clearer, just heavier. The silence has shifted. He turns his head slightly, listening. Then he looks toward the tree line. At first he sees nothing, just the dark outline of branches layered over one another. Then, movement. Subtle, almost easy to miss. A distortion among the trees. Probably a bird, the other man says, still focused on his work. But the first man doesn't respond, because the shape isn't right. It isn't low to the ground like a deer, and it isn't small enough to be any bird they've seen before. Something is standing there, partially hidden, perfectly still, too tall. The second man notices the silence and finally looks up. What is it? The first man raises a hand slightly, not taking his eyes off the tree line. Do you see that? Both of them are staring now. The shape shifts, not stepping forward, not walking, rising, as if it's unfolding from within the darkness itself. A long form straightens, higher and higher still. Then the wings begin to emerge. At first they look like shadows stretching outward from the body. Then they take shape, massive, extending far beyond what should be possible for anything standing among those trees. The last of the fading light catches something within the silhouette. 2 points. Faint at first, then unmistakable. Red. Eyes reflecting what little daylight remains. Watching them. Unblinking. Neither man moves. Neither speaks. The tools in their hands hang useless at their sides. The entire hillside feels suspended in that moment, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. Then, the figure lifts. No running start, no sound. It simply rises from the ground, upward, effortless, clearing the lower branches without disturbing them. The wings stretch wider as it ascends, carrying it above the tree line in a single fluid motion. There is no flapping, no struggle, only a smooth, silent glide into the darkening sky. Within seconds, it disappears, swallowed by the night. The men remain where they stand, still facing the trees, waiting for something to return. But nothing does. The forest settles back into place. The silence returns. Only now, it feels different, heavier than before. Neither man says what they saw, because neither of them can explain it. Not as an animal, not as a man. Only one thing is clear. Whatever had been standing in those trees had been watching them. And whatever it was not supposed to be there. In the days that followed, similar reports would begin to surface. Different locations, different witnesses, but always the same description. A tall, winged figure, glowing red eyes, and silent movement through the night. The sightings would spread quickly, and the small river town of Point Pleasant would soon become the center of something far stranger than anyone there could have imagined. Before we continue, if you're drawn to stories like this, real encounters, unexplained sightings, and cases that were never fully answered, consider subscribing to American Nightmare. New episodes are released regularly, documenting some of the most unsettling events reported across the country. And now, back to our report. In the weeks following the sighting in Clendenin, similar reports began to surface across the region. At first, they were dismissed. Locals assumed the same thing investigators would later suggest: large birds, unusual lighting, overactive imaginations. But the descriptions didn't change. Different people, different locations, always the same figure, tall, winged, and watching. Then came the encounter that would bring national attention. Just outside Point Pleasant lies an area known locally as the TNT site, a remnant of World War II. Once used for munitions storage, the land had been abandoned years earlier, leaving behind a maze of concrete bunkers, domed storage igloos, and overgrown access roads. By 1966, the area had become isolated, quiet, surrounded by dense forest and cut off from regular traffic. At night, it was completely dark. No streetlights, no nearby homes. just empty structures and thick woods stretching in every direction. Late one evening, two young couples drove into the area. There was no specific reason, just curiosity. A place to pass through, a place to explore. Their headlights cut through the darkness, sweeping across the cracked pavement and the curved concrete faces of the abandoned bunkers. The air outside the car was still. No wind, no movement. Until the lights passed over something that wasn't part of the landscape. A figure, standing near one of the structures. At first, they thought it was a man, someone out there alone, too still, too upright. One of them slowed the car slightly. The headlights settled directly on it, and that's when they saw the eyes. Two bright points reflecting back at them. Red, not like an animal caught in the light. Stronger, fixed. The driver hesitated. "Do you see that?" No one answered, because all of them were already staring, trying to understand what they were looking at. Then the shape changed. The figure didn't step forward. It expanded, wings unfolding outward from its sides. Large, wider than the car itself. The illusion of it being human disappeared instantly. Panic set in. The driver pressed the accelerator. The car surged forward, tires briefly slipping against the pavement before catching. They didn't look back immediately. No one wanted to confirm what they had just seen. But within seconds, one of them turned, looking through the rear window. "It's following us." The others turned as well. And there it was, above the road, the same figure, in the air, keeping pace. The wings weren't beating, not in any way that made sense. Yet it was moving effortlessly, matching the car's speed as it pushed faster and faster down the narrow access road. The engine strained, the speed climbed, but the distance between them didn't change. The glowing eyes remained fixed, locked onto the vehicle, locked onto them. The road ahead twisted through the trees, headlights bouncing with every turn. The driver pushed harder, faster than they should have been going, faster than the road allowed. Still, the figure remained, gliding above, silent, unaffected, as if speed meant nothing to it. Then, without warning, it rose higher, pulling upward into the darkness above the trees, and just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The car continued forward. No one spoke. No one suggested turning around. They drove until the trees thinned, until the lights of town began to appear in the distance. Only then did the driver slow, hands shaking slightly on the wheel, all four of them trying to process what had just happened, what they had seen, what had followed them. Within days, their accounts spread. Local newspapers began picking up the story, and with it, more reports surfaced. More sightings, more witnesses describing the same thing. A tall figure, wings extending far beyond its body, glowing red eyes, and silent movement through the night. The name came quickly, simple, unavoidable. Mothman. And as the reports increased, so did the unease in Point Pleasant. Because whatever this was, it wasn't passing through. It was staying. And many began to believe it was watching. By the end of 1966, the sightings had become impossible to ignore. What began as isolated reports had turned into a pattern. Different witnesses, different locations, but always the same description. A tall, winged figure, glowing red eyes, and movement that made no sound. In Point Pleasant, the atmosphere began to change. People talked, quietly at first, then openly. Stories spread through diners, gas stations, and living rooms. Accounts of something seen near the edges of town, along rural roads, near the river, and increasingly near the bridge. The Silver Bridge stretched across the Ohio River, connecting Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio. A narrow steel structure suspended above dark, moving water. During the day, it carried a steady flow of traffic. At night, it stood in near silence. Several witnesses would later claim they saw the figure near the bridge, perched on the structure, standing along the shoreline, watching the traffic pass. Some described a feeling that went beyond fear, not panic, not immediate danger, something else. A sense of being observed, as if the presence wasn't there to attack, but to witness. As the weeks passed, a theory began to take hold, not among officials, not in reports, but among the people. That the creature appeared before something happened, before accidents, before strange events, before death. A warning, an omen. Most dismissed the idea. It was easier that way. Easier than trying to accept that something unknown could be moving through the town with purpose. But the sightings continued through the end of the year, into 1967. Then, on December 15th, at the height of the evening rush, the Silver Bridge collapsed without warning. Cars fell with it. Steel tore apart mid-span, sending vehicles into the freezing water below. Drivers and passengers had no time to react, no time to escape. The river swallowed everything within seconds. Rescue efforts began immediately, but the damage was already done. 46 people lost their lives that night. The town was left in shock. Search crews worked through the water and debris in the days that followed, recovering what they could. Families waited along the riverbanks, hoping, watching. The bridge was gone, and with it, a part of the town itself. In the weeks that followed the disaster, something else happened. The sightings stopped, completely. No more reports, no more witnesses, no more glowing red eyes seen along the roads or near the river. The figure that had been reported again and again was gone. Some believed it was coincidence, that the sightings and the collapse had no connection. that fear had simply amplified imagination. Others weren't so certain. They pointed to the timing, the consistency of the descriptions, the way the sightings increased, then ended, as if whatever had been seen in Point Pleasant had served its purpose, and then left. Investigators would later suggest more grounded explanations. Large birds, sandhill cranes migrating through the area, misidentified shapes in poor lighting. But those explanations never fully matched what witnesses described: the height, the wingspan, the eyes, and the way it moved. Silent, effortless, unnatural. To this day, the Mothman remains one of the most debated sightings in American history. Not because of what it looked like, but because of when it appeared and when it vanished. Was it simply an unknown animal? A misidentified bird seen under the right conditions? Or something else entirely? Something that appears only in moments of tension, moments before tragedy. Not to cause it, but to mark it, to witness it, or perhaps to warn. The people of Point Pleasant still remember the bridge, the night it fell, and the stories that came before it. Stories of something standing just beyond the light, watching, waiting, and then disappearing as suddenly as it arrived. If you've made it this far, you've just listened to one of the most enduring mysteries ever reported in the United States. A case where sightings, witness accounts, and real-world tragedy became permanently connected. If you enjoy these kinds of documented encounters and unexplained cases, make sure you're subscribed to American Nightmare. New episodes are released regularly, and if you're listening late at night, we'll be back Wednesday with American Nightmare Radio, where the stories are quieter, but no less disturbing. Until then, stay aware of what's around you and what might be watching from the dark.